this is my review of Mob Psycho 100. Okay, so this episode starts up where the other one left off, where Mob and Serizawa confront each other in the hallway of the cultural tower, and Serizawa is guarding the way up. So Serizawa immediately out of the gate is shown not to be hostile toward Mob, at least not at first. He willingly tells Mob that to turn around and go home, but not exactly in the way that's like, hey, go home or I'll kick your ass. It's more like, go home, I really don't want to have to hurt you. And case in point, he also releases the Prime Minister, pointing out that he was supposed to be a hostage, but didn't really know who he was or why he was there and just felt bad. So he lets him go. And through the slow exchange, Mob eventually finds out how Serizawa views Claw. At which point Serizawa explains how he became initiated into Claw in the first place. According to him, he had been living as a shut-in for many years, and had mainly shut himself away because his psychic powers were way too dangerous. Until Toichiro showed up, took pity on him, and gave him an umbrella as a security blanket, which he's been using as his primary weapon ever since. Serizawa slowly learned how to channel his psychic powers after meeting up with Toichiro, and Toichiro in turn taught him how to use his psychic powers. But Mob is quick to point out that Toichiro is just using Serizawa and that he's not actually his friend. And sure enough, Mob would know because he has made quite a few friends up to this point. So he knows a thing or two about what friends are and how they operate. So it's mostly just Mob trying to explain how friends work to Serizawa, who doesn't know the difference and is just really upset that Mob is challenging his worldview. Eventually Mob and Dimple realize that his umbrella is the source of his powers and eventually successfully take it away from him. But it causes his powers to go completely out of control for the split second where he doesn't have his umbrella. At which point Mob realizes that Serizawa really can't move into a functioning society the way he is, because he realizes that so long as he continues working for Claw and continues to believe what he wants to believe, he'll never actually learn how to operate as a functioning human being. At which point Serizawa continues to push him, upset and explaining how Mob would never really understand how he feels, and attacks him. However, Mob, who has since worked his way up to his 100%, actually deflects Serizawa's attack, then absorbs all of the negative energy and stress from Serizawa, and uses that stress to convey to him how he felt for the longest time, and showing Serizawa that they're one and the same. And after that, Serizawa and Mob become fast friends, and Serizawa decides to help Mob to talk the boss down. So with that show, it cuts to Show being defeated by his dad, who then explains how exactly he was able to amass such a massive army. So apparently, in addition to being able to stockpile energy, Toichiro is also able to gift his energy to other people. And case in point, he gifted it to his army of 600 espers, which he then, because as he explains, the method of torturing people to create artificial espers wasn't working. According to him, it created a few results, but not on the level that he was hoping for. So he decided to make some espers himself, and sure enough, he then reveals that he is able to stockpile energy, as well as share energy and take it back. So with that, he's able to absorb all the energy from all the espers he's created and absorb them into himself. At which point he's now at full strength and is able to actually pose a significant threat, and threatens to finish off Show with his new power, pointing out that Show kind of really isn't fit to take over the world he wanted him to inherit, as it's been stated. However, Mob shows up and attempts to talk down Toichiro, pointing out that Toichiro will never actually understand what it's like to be a human being, and because as he points out, Toichiro has kind of been stuck in the past since middle school. He believes his powers are anything and never really grew up from that. So he's always believed that his psychic powers made him superior to everybody else, and points out that Mob's really the only one who can understand what he's going through, because as he points out, he was the same way, and therefore feels like he would be a significant person for Toichiro to try and talk to about this. But Toichiro decides not to listen, instead just buckling down on his beliefs and calling Mob foolish for believing in his own beliefs. At which point Sho explains what happens and what happened to Mob's house, and how Toichiro's abilities work. At which point Mob confronts Sho about burning his house down, but claims that he isn't mad, mainly because he realizes that Toichiro is kind of a bit of a bigger problem for him to deal with right now, as he realizes that Sho's in the same boat as his brother, because his brother feels that he would one day turn on people and start using his psychic powers and go berserk, something that Sho's father is doing right as they speak. At which point, and Sho realizes how much she's actually grown up since he last met him, and realizes he probably should have enlisted his help first. So Sho points out that he can hardly move, and that Mob probably doesn't stand much of a chance of dealing with him, and explains how his powers work. But then Mob reveals that he can do the same thing in front of Toichiro, and helps Sho back on his feet. At which point Toichiro declares Mob his nemesis, and points out that since they have a similar power set, that he should defeat Mob as quickly as possible before Mob can actually be a threat. And sure enough, he completely overpowers Mob, and even dropkicks Dimple out of the window. So he shows just how dangerous he is and how powerful he is against Mob, and Mob is eventually beaten into submission. Meanwhile, all the Espers are looking to Reigen for guidance, wondering if it was a good idea to have actually sent Mob in. And Reigen explains it was probably one of the smartest moves they could have made, because, as Reigen puts it, Mob's ability to reach people is what makes him the ideal person to go in and talk down Toichiro and actually deal with him. As not only does he have psychic powers to boot, which will enable him to stand his ground against Toichiro and his massive power abilities, but also explains that because Mob is able to reach people, that he'll probably be able to talk down Toichiro and solve the problem himself. However, that optimism goes completely out the window when Dimple crash lands where the Espers are pulled up, and Reigen, after finding out from Dimple what exactly is going on, climbs up the Seasoning City Cultural Tower himself to confront Toichiro, but not before grabbing Sakurai's gun and bringing it with him. And he shows up at the tail end of Mob and Toichiro's fight and points a gun directly at him, and threatens to shoot if he doesn't leave his student alone, and even tells Mob that he should get himself out, and he'll reward him for fighting so bravely. At which point, when it's proven that the gun actually fails, Toichiro, he instead decides to point it down and feigns joining Toichiro's side to actually try and get close enough to throw a punch at him. This works about as well as you expect, and it just pisses Toichiro off. At which point, Toichiro tries to blow Reigen away with an attack, but Serizawa steps in at the last minute, saves him and sacrifices his umbrella in the process, but shields Reigen from Toichiro's attack. At which point, Toichiro realizes that Serizawa has turned against him and uses his powers to try and send them both flying. But Mob, having seen this, goes into his another 100% mode and goes into his rage ability, which is a new ability we've seen, and is just so angry at the fact that Toichiro would just use his powers to hurt people that he just goes into full-on defensive mode and just absolutely takes the brunt of Toichiro's attack, which does wind up sending Reigen and Serizawa flying out the window of the cultural tower. But Minigishi, who up to this point was working for Toichiro, but after being saved by Mob from whatever his name is, the evil spirit guy. I forget what his name is because he's been a while. But after Mob saves him, Minagishi decided to join up with Mob and become his friend, and to a lesser extent Hattori, who is just kind of there. He hasn't really defected, but he's just kind of there. He warns against Minagishi helping the opposing side, knowing full well what would happen if he betrays him. And Minagishi just doesn't care and instead uses his plant powers to save all the people who just flew out the window. At which point, Toichiro realizes he's in a position where anybody could turn against him and starts firing lasers from his finger, in a manner very similar to Ishiguro from the first season. So he starts shouting "disappear" and starts blasting lasers from his finger. But then Mob intervenes and starts flying tackling Toichiro. But Toichiro starts using his power and starts actually escalating himself to 10%, which makes him a little bit more dangerous as he's able to knock Mob off of him. But Mob was just using the full brunt of his attack to get a reaction, which enables him to just send the entire cultural tower just flying into the sky, and with that the battle proper is able to begin. So there's a lot to unpack in this episode. First and foremost, it's now been explained that Toichiro and Mob are one and the same and are actually foils of one another. Toichiro is able to use his abilities to give psychic powers to other people, as is Mob, but Toichiro used his psychic powers for evil purposes, whereas Mob used them for good purposes. And sure enough, we're kind of born at the top, in a similar manner. And even have, to the extent, have percentage abilities for the respective powers. Toichiro is able to channel his powers to become an energy demon, and Mob is able to channel his powers to become emotionally charged. So they are very similar to one another. And sure enough, now Serizawa is actually friends with Mob and Minagishi as well, I guess. So those two are probably going to wind up being recurring characters after this point, if they survive the final battle. A keyword being if, because Toichiro has up to this point been shown to have incredibly powerful psychic powers, and if he manages to defeat Mob, there's not much else that can stop him. So yeah, Mob is kind of like the last line defense, because only he's able to actually stand a chance against Toichiro and defeat him. So it's going to be interesting seeing how Mob and Toichiro's battle proceeds into the next episode. But yeah, this episode overall just shows that how much of a foil Toichiro is for Mob, and that's a big thing about this episode. It shows that they are in fact one and the same, but they kind of diverged on their paths after discovering their powers. So the two are in fact polar opposites of one each other, and it shows. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy my review of Mob Psycho 100, then let me know in the comment section down below, or over my Discord server, a link in the description as per always. And also, if you wanna help support the show, then just be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on Facebook and Twitter to keep up to date with what's going on. And also help support me on Patreon if you do want to actually help support me financially. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that are my way saying thanks, so be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!